Hi, everybody. I'm Corey Wilson. I'm excited to be here to share my experiences with volunteerism and hope that you'll take away valuable insights that you can apply in your organization as you create or enhance opportunities for volunteers to work with your organization. Thank you for joining me for this pre-recorded session. First, a brief introduction of myself and credentials. I've lived in New Hampshire for 32 years and have volunteered in some capacity ongoing for that entire time. I'm a community volunteer in the schools with sports and other organizations and have been since I was a child. In addition to working with existing opportunities, I have created new opportunities in which I volunteered and caused others to do so. And as a college professor for 9 years, I also had the privilege of teaching and showing students the value of volunteering, which I now look forward to sharing with you. In this session, we'll outline some general and specific information and highlight with examples. Some of this will apply more or less, depending on your organization's goals and current situation. In this presentation, we'll look at several things. Why do you need volunteers? Why do people volunteer? What do they want and expect from their experience? How do you ensure a fit between volunteers and your organization? What are your expectations and how do you make sure that your volunteers meet them? I'll share possible benefits and pitfalls, as well as offer a couple of exercises to help you in your quest. I encourage you to make notes on these and complete the exercises on your own. To that end, you might want to open up a Word document or grab a notepad and pencil to take notes as we go. I also invite you to join me at either of the two Q&A sessions where you can share your responses, ask more questions, and as we can share together what we're not able to do here now. Today, I'll define what a volunteer is, share why people want to volunteer, and provide an overview of what your organization and the volunteer might hope to get from the experience. First, what is a volunteer? In simple terms, a volunteer is someone who chooses to provide a service and is not paid. However, while not a paid employee or contractor, volunteers will be required to follow organization policies and all municipal laws. You may have preconceived notions about what a volunteer is, what they do, how they're different from employees, and more. These notions may or may not be accurate. Take a minute to think about the following and make some notes for yourself. Have you ever been a volunteer? What was your experience with that? When you hear the word volunteer, what do you think of? What do you think the differences are between a volunteer and an employee, beyond the employee getting paid? Why do you think people will want to volunteer for your organization? Write down some notes for yourself, and at any point, feel free to pause the video and make your notes in that time. Some organizations consist solely of volunteers. Others, while run by paid employees or contractors, need volunteers to fill certain roles, either on an occasional basis or ongoing. Volunteer opportunities can be short-term one-offs or something of short duration, or long-term ongoing opportunities depending on the organization's needs. Most nonprofit organizations and service clubs don't bring in enough funding to pay salaries and stipends for every job they need to fill. Their model is mostly or all volunteer-led. Kiwanis, Lions, and Rotary are examples of international organizations that function at the local level. At the local level, volunteers provide services to the community and run the behind-the-scenes management of the organization, while at the national level, there's paid staff. Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts are also modeled similarly, often having mid-level staff at a regional level. Sometimes individuals are contracted to do very specific work for the organization. The New Hampshire Senior Games is an example. While there are employees at the national level, the entirety of this state sport tournament is run by a volunteer board of directors and sport coordinators, and the only paid person is a part-time marketing consultant. Other organizations, such as police athletic leagues or AmeriCorps Vista programs, utilize volunteers and have a small paid staff to run the daily workings of the local organizations. Most smaller grassroots organizations are completely run by volunteers. Examples might include your town's youth recreation sports program, where the board of directors, coaches, and even officials are often volunteers. The bottom line is volunteers enable an organization to do more than they could do without volunteers. Because of this, each organization has unique needs that result in short or long-term opportunities. Volunteers improve the value of what the organization offers, increase their reach in the community, provide extended opportunities for fundraising, provide a different perspective. It's important that organizations consider the role of volunteers with respect to the structure or model of the organization. Think about your organization structure. Why do you or your organization want to use volunteers and develop a volunteer program? How do you anticipate the use of volunteers will allow you to increase opportunities? You can pause this video and make some notes here. Why do people volunteer? Well, the specific benefits may depend on the organization or the individual, but in general, volunteers enjoy a variety of professional and personal benefits. People volunteer for some or all of the following: give back to their community, share their knowledge and expertise with others, learn new skills, connect with others with shared interests, make new friends and network for personal and professional benefit, improve their communication and human interaction skills. Other benefits such as joining in meetings, food, organization gear or swag, and even parties and other forms of recognition. And volunteering may lead to a paid position with the organization. Volunteers sometimes go on to fill paid positions that open up, or even help the organization create new positions that the volunteer can then fill. Which of these benefits do you believe your organization can offer to volunteers? How will your organization meet these needs? Here are some examples. In AmeriCorps, Vista volunteer with a local organization proved the value of the work she was doing to the extent that she and the executive director developed a proposal for her volunteer role to become a full-time paid position. They presented this to the board of directors, who voted in favor and found a funding source. She was then hired to this new position, continuing the work she had done during her volunteer period, but now as a paid employee. Another example is from myself. 11 years ago, I volunteered at the then Bank of America Champions Tournament. I worked 7 days, all day and into the early evening, to help implement the PGA Senior Golf Tournament. I was able to put classroom knowledge into action and worked on valuable skills to use toward my future career in sport management. I networked with other volunteers, members of the PGA organization, and both professional and amateur golfers. My interactions benefited the PGA by welcoming them, making friendships, and otherwise using socialization to cement their relationship to the PGA and the event. I learned about how sport events are run, golf in particular, and how to manage the inevitable challenge that arise. Of course, over the course of the week, every day led to an even better tomorrow for me, and this filtered down through my interactions and tasks. I was empowered to find and implement solutions when needed. A case in point, because of my previous experience, I was utilized in a variety of places throughout the tournament all week. For 2 days, I was empowered and supported to assert myself and further develop my customer service skills when I ended up being put on bouncer duty in the hospitality area. As you can imagine, this could be difficult and even unsettling at times. I was given the support needed and encouraged to manage several situations rather than turning them over to a paid staff member. The benefit to the organization in all this is twofold. First, they didn't have to take paid staff from elsewhere and put them in these spaces. And second, while supporting from afar their well-placed trust in me, I gained the confidence to continue doing more and wanting to do my best for them. Another thing the tournament did well was to support and recognize the volunteers. There was a tent for us to stop in any time we were not on duty. We could rest, have snacks and beverages, and socialize. And at the end of the tournament, they threw us a big party where we could all gather and enjoy each other's company with food and music. We had access to some leftover items from the event that were being tossed out. So I even went home with a sleeve of new imprinted reusable plastic cups. I still have one to this day. While the event was not perfect, and it certainly was hard work, my memories are positive because of the way the experience was structured for volunteers. Another example is my involvement with a community service organization I am no longer a part of, specifically because of the way I was treated as a volunteer. The organization was run entirely by volunteers. I brought to this organization a significant amount of experience and ideas, And while I did not always expect to get my way or have my ideas used, I was consistently made to feel by certain members that my age and gender diminished the value of what I could share. In addition, there was little support when certain issues arose. The individuals with whom there were challenges were the leaders and viewed by others as all knowing. While I appreciated the great work they did and wanted to help, the environment was not positive, supported, or empowering, and I did not feel valued for being anything more than a workhorse. Attempts to correct this were not successful. After much deliberation, I made the choice to take my time and talents elsewhere. So think about these two examples, one very positive and one not. Does everyone in your organization buy into the idea of using volunteers? Does everyone understand that volunteers are more than grunt workers and they should be valued as such? How will you recognize and ensure that you support the value your volunteers bring to the organization? How will you address it if volunteers tell you they're not satisfied? It's important to find volunteers that you believe are a fit for your organization and they feel they're a fit too. The ideal situation is one in which both the volunteer and the organization benefit. While not uncommon for the balance to fluctuate at times, it's important that neither feels taken advantage of. If it becomes too lopsided for too long, there's a need to evaluate and determine if it can be adjusted for mutual benefit, and if not, it may be time for the volunteer to move on. Much like a paid employee situation, the key is finding a volunteer opportunity that is a fit for both parties. What does fit mean and how do you know when you have it? Ask yourself, do the volunteer's culture and core values match our organization's? Does the volunteer's personality and work style appear complementary? Do the tasks satisfy what the prospective volunteer is looking to experience in our organization? Have we introduced the prospective volunteer to people they might be working with? Does the prospective volunteer give clear indication they can see themselves doing the work? Do they have the skills needed or can they learn them? Have we asked the volunteer why they want to volunteer and what they hope to get out of the experience? And does our gut just tell us that this person will be a fit for the organization? If it seems like there's a fit, it might be worth committing to this, at least on a trial basis. Once you accept this person as a volunteer, then you need to continue to ensure that the fit remains. This comes by way of mutual satisfaction. Is the organization getting what they need from the volunteer and the volunteer getting what they need from the experience? If the answer to both is yes, then you can choose to continue. Sometimes, however, it's not a fit, and you don't always know that until the volunteer becomes entrenched in the work. Maybe it's not what they expected, or you're having them do things they don't feel comfortable with and they're struggling. Maybe they don't feel support. It could be a list of things. Maybe on your end, you're not getting from them one or more things you need in terms of skills, commitment, attitude, behaviors, or more. With short-term volunteer opportunities, there are less significant implications in that the relationship will end soon, but you still need the volunteer to do the job that they committed to. Long-term projects or commitments may be different. When you or the volunteer determine there's not a fit, it's important to discuss this. Perhaps there are strategies to improve the situation, and that's another workshop session entirely. But if there are not, or you try them and things are still not working, it may be this is not a fit and you and the volunteer can choose to part ways. The process of how to handle a potential separation is also a topic for another session on its own. But always keep in mind that clear communication from the start and ongoing will likely be the key to satisfied, highly effective volunteers for your organization. What does it mean to be just a volunteer? On the one hand, volunteers are not employees, they're not paid, which may lead you to think they do not or should not have as much responsibility and should not be held accountable or be part of anything more than what is required of them in their role. On the other hand, a volunteer might question if, as a volunteer, the organization values them as much as a paid employee. Do you appreciate what they bring to the role? Experience, knowledge, transferable skills. Do you provide an environment in which the volunteer can share if they see room for improvement or new idea implementation, or something that is truly wrong? Do they feel confident and enabled to speak up? Keep in mind that while the volunteer is not getting paid to do the work, Once they commit to it, they cannot use being just a volunteer as an excuse for not getting things done. And being a volunteer does not exempt them from basic rules of business, such as acting professionally, showing up on time, staying as long as required or longer, following internal and external policies, supporting the organization, and speaking positively about it. Volunteers should never malign the name of the organization. Volunteers should still be held responsible and accountable to the extent that their role requires. They should learn to ask for what they need, to offer ideas and suggestions, and generally step up. Organizations must provide the training and appropriate environment for all of this to happen. Organizations and supervisors need to create an environment in which volunteers can do all these things. And while they may be just a volunteer, given the opportunity, they might aspire to do more or even step into more leadership positions to demonstrate their value. They will continue to gain valuable experience, and the situation or event can run more smoothly, which of course benefits your organization in the end. What should a volunteer expect from the organization in terms of training? What should the organization provide in order to integrate seamlessly into the organization and their role? Volunteer training, onboarding, and orientation are various words for similar concepts. Before accepting someone for the position, you should ensure they have a clear understanding of what the role entails, and this should be further explained and explored once the organization and volunteer agree they will come on board. At that time, the organization should make it clear what is expected through some sort of training. This can be one-time onboarding or ongoing training depending on the nature of the organization. Training might include reviewing core values of the organization, providing clear expectations and information, both orally and in writing through a handbook. Learning who other staff are and what everyone's role is. Volunteers should understand their expected tasks and responsibilities. They should they should understand what role you expect them to play. Are they expected to interact with others, provide reports, attend meetings, and participate, or just observe? Other protocols, policies, and procedures for the organization might include dress code, confidentiality, what they can and can't do without permission. Do they need to bring meals? What are the hours, breaks, and unexpected extra time and tasks that might be encountered? And where things are so that they don't always have to ask you for the basics. They should also know what happens if they can't come in and who they should contact. If you have volunteers for a one-day or weekend-long event, a brief training at the start of the shift would probably include an abbreviated list, and that is probably more than enough. However, if you have an ongoing volunteer, there might be initial orientation followed by additional training on a periodic basis. Volunteers might identify the opportunity to think critically about the organization and share their input. This allows them to develop or practice this skill while providing the organization with information and ideas. It would be great if you could include them in program development, planning, execution, and more, where able and relevant to their role, or perhaps allow them to expand their role based on what they can offer. They might have knowledge that can contribute to a discussion. They might have run a similar event or had experience with a similar process where they can contribute. Your organization should not test volunteers, though, and you should never set them up to fail. This not only discourages the volunteer, it hurts your organization. Volunteers should also be reminded that while they may not be paid, people are counting on them. So once they commit, they need to follow through on this commitment. When volunteers do not show up or complete a task as needed, it sets the organization back and someone still has to do the task. Volunteers should be encouraged to identify opportunities to contribute or ways to improve the policies and procedures of the organization, then approach their supervisor with a basic plan or proposal. Volunteer supervisors should work with volunteers to encourage them to further develop and bring proposals back to them or present to a larger group. Volunteers should be treated as the contributors they are. They're not just a volunteer, they have a lot to offer. Let them offer ideas. Treat those ideas the same as anyone else offering them. Empower them to present them where appropriate. Empowering volunteers and giving them flexible parameters may be the best thing you can do for your organization. Keep in mind why you want a volunteer program for your organization. What will volunteers do and what value will they bring to you? Be clear with prospective volunteers as to their role and your expectations of them in that role. Gain insight into what the volunteer wants from the experience. Once you accept volunteers, be sure to provide training both initially and ongoing as needed. Provide opportunities for volunteers to learn and grow personally and professionally, to gain back from their experience in addition to giving to the organization. Thank volunteers and recognize them. Remind them that you accepted them because you believe they have something to add value to your organization. I thank you for joining me, and I would encourage you to join in on one or both of the Q&A sessions by registering at the link you see on this page. You're also welcome to email me directly if you have questions or you want to talk more. And I hope that you enjoy this, and I hope that I'll see you soon. Thank you.